Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to invite the members of this chamber to imagine for a moment you have a rare and terminal form of cancer. Your doctor has given you less than 6 months to live. Imagine there are limited FDA-approved treatments and you have exhausted every one. Imagine there is an investigational treatment currently in the clinical trial phase of the FDA approval process, and according to your doctor, it shows promising results. Imagine your doctor recommends this treatment and helps you apply to the clinical trial. Imagine you are rejected because you do not meet the very selective criteria they are looking for in trial participants. Imagine, while you have months to live, the FDA will not approve this treatment for years. Imagine this treatment is already available in Europe. Imagine that the very wealthy with your same cancer fly overseas for this treatment while you cannot afford it. Imagine your doctor is ready to help you and the manufacturer is willing to make this treatment available. Imagine you make the decision, you yourself, to try this treatment, which may work or may not, but you decide to try to save your own life. Imagine then that the government says no. Imagine that you are now out of options and there is nothing left to do but wait. Well, I invite you to imagine yourself in this situation. Know that I am not inviting you to imagine a hypothetical. This was the true story of Kiana Carnes, a 41-year-old mother of 4 who was diagnosed with kidney cancer in 2002. After 2 years of using the only FDA-approved treatment, which failed for her, she learned that Pfizer and Bayer were both conducting clinical trials for new investigational medications. She applied for those clinical trials, and she was denied. After struggling for months with the FDA, trying to get permission to use these investigational medicines, she died on March 24, 2005, from advanced kidney cancer. Less than a year later, both drugs were given final FDA approval to treat advanced kidney cancer. Too late for Kiana Carnes. This legislation, LD 180, commonly known as right to try, is very simple. When someone with a terminal condition has exhausted every FDA-approved option, should they have the right to make their own choice to try to save their life, or should government make that choice for them? This legislation would recognize that terminally ill patients have a right to try an investigational drug, biological product, or medical device which has passed the early stages of the FDA approval process. This bill would require a patient to sign an informed consent. It would require that they had already applied for the clinical trial and not been accepted. It would require that the treatment has been recommended by the patient's doctor. It is also very important to know that there is no mandate in this legislation. Every piece of it is voluntary. Manufacturers are not required to provide the treatment. Insurance companies are not required to pay for it. All this legislation does is say that if people are willing to come together and make it happen, government will not stand in the way. Now, some have argued against this legislation because the FDA has a multi-step governmental program where a terminally ill patient can ask for permission to try to save his or her own life. I believe the problem here is readily apparent. When you have a terminal illness, you don't have time to wait for a multi-step governmental process. For a physician to apply their patient for the FDA's expanded access program, the paperwork itself takes 100 hours to complete. At least that's the FDA's own estimate of how long it takes. That's 2 straight weeks for a physician not seeing patients, just doing paperwork. And that isn't even the end of it. Expanded access applications are also subject to approval by an institutional review board, which can add another month to the process. Kiana Carnes, that 41-year-old mother of 4 who was diagnosed with kidney cancer, she applied for the FDA's expanded access program, and she waited for months, even contacting her local congressman for help. On March 24, 2005, the FDA finally notified Kiana's family that they had approved her application. Tragically, it was too late. Kiana Carnes died that same day. That's why 24 states have already passed right-to-try laws to guarantee terminally ill patients the right to make their own choices to save their own lives. Now, I just want to go off script for a second to address some concerns that were raised by the senator from Cumberland. Just one misconception. It was mentioned that people can get access to these during phase 1. That's, unless I misheard that, that's inaccurate. These drugs, which are going through the FDA approval process and can be another 10 years out, they have to have completed at least phase 1. They have to be into phase 2 or phase 3, where clinical trials are already happening. The other question that was raised was expense, and what would be the expense to patients who would like to participate in this. Well, I'll just say we have 24 other states that have passed this, and in 99% of cases, when a patient is afforded access to one of these investigational treatments, it is provided at zero cost to the patient. And in both federal law and in the text of this bill, manufacturers, if they choose to make this treatment available, are limited to charging for just the cost of manufacturing what is being provided. They are prohibited from making a profit on that. And the reason that in 99% of cases manufacturers make these available at no cost is because they eventually want to take this to market and they don't like to necessarily admit how much it costs to make each individual item. So 99% of the time it's available at no cost to the patient. So, Mr. President, I will be voting in the affirmative on this motion. I think this is a very important piece of legislation for those who are suffering with terminal illnesses, who want to make their own choice on whether or not to seek to preserve their own lives, and I invite the chamber to join with me. Thank you very much.